Today I'm building a server, and that server is going to have a piece of software called TrueNas, and it's going to be a network storage solution to hold all the videos that we make. So on the bench there, just using an old case, and Kevin donated that to motherboard, CPU, and RAM. And once this is all together, I'm actually going to use a product called Proxmox, which is a Type 1 hypervisor. And if you're not familiar with what a hypervisor is, um, it's essentially a uh, small program that runs that allows you to build virtual machines in it. And what's great about a Type 1 hypervisor is that you can give direct access to the hardware with the VMs that you create on it. Okay, so the computer was set up and connected to the peripherals. I was, to be honest, too lazy to connect up my video capture, so I ended up just filming the screen. So here we're just going to do the Proxmox install. Uh, you need to download the ISO and then get that over onto a bootable USB. You can use Rufus or Balena Etcher or whatever. Um, anyway, that'll get you your bootable media so that you can get the installer going. And basically, you just pick your install disk. We are using that NVMe, so that's going to be the drive that this is installed on. And I'm just making sure there's nothing in there I need to see. This obviously erases the entire drive, and you need to pick your location. So for me, Edmonton is always the closest because nobody ever puts Calgary in there. And give yourself a nice password for what will be the root user. I'm not entirely sure if you really need to put an email address. I just put our YouTube channel's address in. Of course, right now I'm scrambling to figure out what it was, but there you go. And here it just gives you a breakdown of what's going to happen. All right, so we got our first reboot. I've always seen errors when Proxmox boots. This isn't my first go around with it. Okay, so here we are booted into Proxmox, and we have to get it set up to install TrueNas. So here you can see the host name of this node. Uh, it would have been called PVE had I not changed its host name. I just wanted it to say something else, and home lab, whatever, that's fine. So yeah, this is kind of like the main sort of screen of Proxmox. Right now I've got disks selected, and it shows you all the disks that it can see. The NVMe is obviously the boot partition of that server where Proxmox is installed. And then here's the six 8 terabyte hard drives that we're going to pass through to TrueNAS. Now, there's a little bit of work that's involved to pass these drives through. TrueNAS, if you just pass these through, it won't pass through the drive serial numbers, and there's some work that we have to do in a specific file that's going to pass through these serial numbers to TrueNAS so that it doesn't complain. So we're going to go through that step right now. We're going to upload the TrueNAS ISO. So actually, I will just pause right here. The Proxmox has a local kind of like a resource or a repository. And this would be on the actual boot drive. So my boot drive is a terabyte. And in this repository, you can put your ISO images of the systems that you would like to virtualize. So obviously we're going to do TrueNAS. So right now I'm going to upload the TrueNAS ISO into this repository so that we can use it later when we build the actual VM. So I'll let this continue. Okay, ISO is uploaded. It's ready to use. And we can create our VM. That was my first attempt. Now I'm going to do it for real. So we need to give it a name. We want it to start at boot. We have to pick our ISO image that the installer is going to start from. And obviously I'm checking the document again. We can leave all of this system stuff as default. That's totally fine. The disk is, I mean, you could leave it at 32 gigs, but I'm going to give it a 64 gigabyte drive, which is fine for TrueNAS. And here I'm going to give it some cores. So I think I'm choosing, 8 cores. on one socket. For RAM, I'm going to give it, I think 12 gigabytes is what I did. And the network stuff, you can just leave it alone. It's fine. And we're gonna not start the machine right now because we have to do some tasks with these hard drives. Okay, pausing the video. This is our new machine that we just created. Um, I believe that Proxmox always starts at 100 when you create a machine. If I was to create another new machine, it would be 101, 102, etc. Uh, just be aware that um, when we update some config files, you need to know what your number of your machine is, right? So it's 100. I mean, I only have one, so it's not that big of a deal. Okay, moving on. Pausing. Uh, this is the breakdown of the machine. So notice that under hard disk, there isn't 6 8 terabyte drives yet. So what we're going to do next is we're going to pass those hard drives through. In this particular VM, I only need to pass the hard drives through. I don't care about uh, passing the physical video card or the physical network interface, etc. I only need the hard drives. Okay, so here's where we're going to install a piece of software. Um, and it's a piece of software that's going to help you identify your hard drives and their serial numbers. Um, I'll just say right now, it took me a couple of attempts to get this to install. I'll show you the error. It doesn't exist. And also, I believe I was using the wrong syntax in my command here. I'm going to actually just edit that out, this portion out, because nobody needs to see me fumble around trying to install a piece of software. And then we'll pick up once I have this little utility installed. Okay, so now that I have the correct syntax to install this little utility, we'll go ahead and get that done. Okay, and then we'll run that utility. So, okay, just pausing the video. Here, this is listing uh, your storage devices. All we're interested in is seeing the drives and their serial numbers. And we're going to modify one of the config files of Proxmox itself. And I'm going to include the commands that I typed in to do this, by the way. Okay, so this long command, which will be in the description, this is going to show us um, the devices, the hard drives. Uh, I believe it's their logical location and their serial number, which is exactly the information we need for the next step. Yeah, so there we go. There's our 6 8 terabyte drives, and that's our boot drive. So starting from SDA, B, C, D, E, F, etc. This is the drive, the vendor and its serial number. And so these are the Western Digital drives, and these are the Seagate drives. And there's the serial number information that we're looking for each of those. So right here off screen, uh, I'm actually copying um, this information into a Word doc so I can append it with other information because we're going to be pasting this into the config file that we edit. Okay, so here we're um, using the command um, to set the hard drives and their serial numbers into machine 100. So I'm going to do this 6 times, and that will um, not only pass the drives through to the VM, but it should update their serial numbers. So I believe I go over here and I check to make sure that it was correct. And yes, there it is. There's that first hard drive. So actually, I should specify something. Um, the boot drive is SCSI 0, and the next drive obviously is 1, and then of course it'll go numerically up from there. In the command that I typed in to pass this drive through, you got to make sure that you increase this by 1 each time. So here we'll go back to the console or the shell and do it again. So I have these pre-filled out in a notepad document, so you can see there's SCSI 2, and that's the next disk. Okay, and there's all 5 8 terabyte drives passed through to the VM. So now we're going to actually, let me just pause. Uh, actually, hold on. For some reason, it didn't paste right. I got to fix that. Okay, so what I'm doing here is the CP command. I'm going to back up the machine's configuration file to another directory, just so that I have a way to revert if need be. Okay, so now we're going to use Nano to edit this file. So in Nano, you use the arrow keys to move around, and then you can modify your data, and then you can write out with Control O, and then you can exit with Control X. So what I'm going to do here on these 6 drives is I'm going to append the serial number to this. And this is what's going to pass through to TrueNAS so that TrueNAS will see the serial numbers of these drives. You would think that this is good enough because these are the serial numbers, but it's actually not. So you'll see that in a sec here. Okay, so there's the first drive, and just verifying to make sure that the serial numbers match. And of course, I have this in a notepad outside of this recorded window, so I'm just copying and pasting. Okay, so now you're going to press Control O, and it'll ask you, do you want to write? And you just hit enter, and it will write that file. Okay, and now you just do Control X to get out of Nano. And I think we can go back and check the disks in the VM. And there you see the serial number information has been appended to each one. Okay, and now we can actually start the machine and click console to see the output. So this is going to be installing TrueNAS into the VM that we just built. And we'll choose 1. Be sure to select your actual boot drive, which is the 64 gig. Spacebar selects it. Tab down. This is your last warning. Create a root password. I just chose to boot in BIOS. I'm sure that's fine. I have enough RAM. I don't need a swap. Okay, so now we can just reboot the system and let it boot for the first time. So first boot, it needs to do a little um, bit of more configuration. So while it's generating this, this takes quite a while. I'll just fast forward through this. Okay, so I'll just pause. Uh, this is done now. Uh, you don't have to do anything uh, on the options that are showing now. You can just go to on another machine, go to that URL, and you'll log in, and then we can continue on with the rest of the setup inside of TrueNAS. So building uh, the choosing the hard drives and building the file system and creating a share, and yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so there's the IP address that TrueNAS was showing us on its boot screen, and you're going to put root and then the password you set in TrueNAS. Okay, so this is your main screen in TrueNAS, and it has some various pieces of information to help you monitor your TrueNAS. So, as I said before, um, I I gave it 8 cores, and it's probably going to end up being way overpowered. So I'll probably bump that down in Proxmox on the virtual machine itself. I'll probably bump it down later. I just gave it 12 gigs. I don't know why I chose that number. That's what popped into my head. I'll see if I need to adjust that later at some point as well. Um, yeah, and then you've got your network interface, and there's some other items that you can use for monitoring. Um, I am by no means a expert in TrueNAS. This is actually only my second install of it ever. So, and same thing with Proxmox. I kind of know how to use it. Um, I've used it for a few years, but again, not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. Uh, Typically with things like Proxmox, um, for instance, passing through the hard drive serial numbers to TrueNAS, uh, I actually didn't know you needed to do that. So while I was researching getting TrueNAS running on top of Proxmox, I read an article that stated that if you didn't do that, you'd have issues. So obviously, I researched it, and I uh, found the process and the commands that I needed. Uh, I obviously don't know those off the top of my head. As a matter of fact, I don't know who would, but because that's honestly what Google's for. As long as you know what you want to do and you know how to search for it, you should be fine. Okay, so at some point here, we're going to set up the hard drives in TrueNAS. By the way, if you are wondering why I keep moving the cursor around the screen in the pre-recorded, um, I actually had narrated this as I went. I'll just pause it here. I narrated it as I went, but the audio quality after the fact, when I played it back, it was horrendous. So I'm doing a voiceover now because there's no way I could upload that with the way that the audio quality was. Okay, so here's our disks under storage. Um, the 64 gig boot drive, and then the six 8 terabyte drives. So we have to create a pool, and this is where we're going to add our drives that we want. So we'll give it a pool name. I think I just called it Home Lab. Well, not whom. Home pool. Yeah. And you have to add the drives you want. So you just pick all of them and add them. So here, uh, I actually stopped for a while and I looked up the different RAID Z levels. Um, the original RAID Z would have given me something like almost 37 terabytes. However, there's no fault tolerance. And RAID Z2, I believe I'm sitting at, which is, by the way, the one that I went with. Uh, I believe I'm right around 20, just 28.9, so 29 terabytes of space. So I lost like 7 terabytes going to RAID Z2. I chose Z2 because, again, you can lose up to 2 disks before you suffer data loss. And then Z3 just didn't make any sense for me. So yeah, I'll start the video back up. Okay, now we have to select all the disks and create the array. Or, well, the pool, I guess. RAID array is more old school. Okay, so there's the pool. So now we're going to create a share, and I'm just going to use a Windows share for now. Okay, so we have to tell it where is it going to, where is the share going to be. So our pool was called home pool, and I'm just going to have it create a folder by manually typing it here. So I'm going to call mine ingest, even though I'm typing YouTube right now. And I just left the permissions the same, or the default. Here we just turned SMB on, and now we're going to do the permissions. So I think I chose the home, yeah, the home setting, which is like a pre-baked in permission set. I'm going to pause it here. The pre-baked in quote home permissions actually didn't work for me, like out of the box. So, even though it says that everyone uh, can traverse, I still couldn't get to the share from my other computer. So I don't have it filmed right here, what I did to fix that. I think I'll add another small video at the end of this, but essentially I had to go to the accounts, and I created a user account, and I then made that user account like the owner of this share, and then that worked for me. All right, so here I'm creating a user. And then here I'm telling it what I'm going to have access to. And I'm just double checking this, what just happened. Okay, so the end result of Proxmox and TrueNas configuration is to get my network share up and running. And as you can see, I've got 28.9 terabytes of space, and I've got some folders that I use. There's a folder just for me, and I'm archiving our YouTube videos. Actually, the raw footage is all archived here, and I've got a folder where I can put in some resources that we use for the videos. Yeah, I mean, I've got I think quite a few years of space